Hello again, YouTube. I'm back to talk about all of the new things coming to Redeemart in the first major update release. I've been working away on Chapter 2 of the game, and I'm so excited to release it. Before we talk about that though, I just want to say a huge thank you to all the new subscribers. I know consistency isn't my strong suit with the channel, but seeing subscribers trickle in while I've been working away has made me very happy. So thank you very much. And along those lines, I know people really enjoyed the OpenGL text rendering optimization video, so I just wanted to let you know my next video will be back to C++ in OpenGL and have more free code provided. So please be patient, I see the demand, and I have good stuff coming your way soon. I have a lot of video ideas I want to do to keep exploring that type of content, so just wait and see. With all that being said, today's video is about everything coming to Chapter 2 of Redeemart. Update is just about content complete, and I'm switching over to polishing and QA soon, and I hope to have the update out relatively soon. So let's check out what's new in Redeemart A Convenient Apocalypse. Let's break down all the exciting changes coming in this new major update. First off, as you might expect, there's a new weapon for this section of Redeemart. The Grill Sploder is going to be the next weapon in the game you'll assemble and fight off monsters with. I know I've shown some footage of this in the past, but now it's all polished and brought in. The idea of the Grill Sploder is to have a weapon which is a little bit slower but allows you to target enemies with some range. And it becomes interesting because as enemies move forward, you kind of have to try and anticipate where they're going to be when you fire your bullets. I've included some footage here of the assembly. I think I've shown this before. If not, it's on my Twitter. I've uploaded some videos on this. And I've also included some footage of some combat with the new weapon. Of course, with this being a new major update, that means 8 more levels to the game, a whole new chapter. And this chapter is focused on Isaac, the cashier in the store. On top of the new weapon you'll be able to use to fight monsters with, there's also going to be one new enemy added. We've seen this in the past, but this Space Fox monster is finally coming into the game. From a gameplay perspective, the idea of this new enemy was to create one that teleports around and requires you to predict where it's going to be when you fire. I really like this because you can spawn up a lot of them in a level and kind of have them pester you. If you just have one enemy, they're really easy to deal with, but if you have a lot of them, or if you have demons as well as the turtle enemies spawned up, it can be kind of overwhelming to try and manage them. And I really like the idea of having more strategy in the game. Along with the story content and all of the combat gameplay, there's also a couple new gameplay modes. These are kind of one-off throughout the game, so I'll just kind of go through them quickly. But throughout the story, you'll be solving slider puzzles, painting pictures with your friends, and taking photos in the store to compete to see who can get the best pics. All of those gameplay modes really come through the story from the character Isaac, and something I wanted to bring into this new section was the idea that once you become friends with Isaac and as you befriend him, those gameplay modes actually benefit you in combat. So with this update, there'll be new abilities you can use while you fight monsters. The 2 abilities are a camera flash, which will freeze or stun all of the enemies on screen for a set time, and a paint splash, which will slow enemies for quite an extended period of time. Of course, as you might expect, with a new content patch, there's going to be new Readymost cards. The upgrades they represent are mostly around the Grill Sploder, creating new abilities and improving it to make it even more powerful. With the new Redeemart cards, the price of packs is also going to be increased, and so to make it easier to buy new cards, I've added some upgrades for the game touring that you can purchase, which is going to speed up the process of earning Redebucks. Another quality of life improvement I've added to go with the cards and the Redebucks is I've added the ability to recycle all of your duplicate cards to get some Redebucks back. Something I've been working on behind the scenes, which might not have a big impact on the gameplay, but has been kind of a concern for me as a programmer, is I've been working to upgrade the version of C++ I'm using for the game in the engine. So in the past, I was on C++ 14, and with this release, I've actually gone from 17 to 20. This should have a slight performance increase, maybe just in terms of optimizations, but it's more so just making sure that the engine is on the latest version of C++. So once again, you might not notice a big difference, but for me as a programmer, I was really happy to get this done. And this upgrade was actually pretty painless. I had to go through and I was using the namespace std, so I had to go through and remove that and just add that prefix anytime I was using strings or vectors. That got me up to 17, and then for 20 I had to go through and make sure that I was const correct with all of my parameters, as that seemed to cause some issues. But I went through and I updated all those. Those are probably things I should have done from the beginning, so my code is just a little bit cleaner now, and I'm up to the modern standard. While working on this update, I spent time trying to improve the game's performance and stability. I think I've talked about this before, but in the game, I actually pre-render a lot of the scenes just to be able to have thousands of objects on the screen. So at the start of the game, I pre-render every camera angle and draw every non-moving object in the scene. Then, when the game is played, I only have to draw the moving objects. This works well, but during this update, I did some testing to look at how many dynamic objects I'm actually drawing. So I added this UI item that would list every draw call. And what I found was as the story went on, I added more and more dynamic objects to the store, and as a result, the performance decreased. So in order to alleviate this, I built functionality to update the pre-renders, meaning if something gets added to the store and it's static, it'll be captured in those updated pre-renders. Although updating does incur an immediate frame drop, I found adding this has helped stabilize the performance and allowed me to add more and more items to the store. I'm really happy with this because I want the store to change over the course of the story. Another performance improvement I made was around the shelf views. If you've played the current version of Redeemart, you know the frame rate drops when you enter a shelf. This is because I'm drawing a lot of dynamic objects, and frankly, a lot of not seen dynamic objects. The game currently uses frustum culling, which really helps the performance by not drawing objects that are outside the camera's view. However, I don't have any solution for occlusion culling, which means when you enter a shelf in the middle of the store and there are objects behind the aisle that you're looking at, they're going to be drawn too, even though they're obscured by the shelf in front of you. At some point in the future, I'd like to add that occlusion culling, but right now, I just went with a simple solution, which was to add a new Lua file, which would just specify, when you're in this shelf, only render objects from the following shelves, and if none are specified, it'll just do the current behavior. With this change, it cuts down on the number of superfluous draw calls, and I've noticed that when you enter shelves in the middle of the store, the frame rate's really improved, as you can see here. Of course, the shelves that were against a wall already had good frame rates because there was nothing behind them that was being rendered. I'm very pleased with all these gains, and I'll definitely continue to improve the performance as I go. It is important to highlight that all of these optimizations have been around how I use the pipeline. None of it has been around optimizing the shaders and GPU usage. Once the game is content complete, I plan on going through and improving the actual performance of individual draw calls and GPU utilization. One optimization that I was really happy with, because it was pretty low-hanging fruit but gave a pretty big result in the end, was I actually changed the texture depths that I was storing for images for the screen. So I switched from 16 bits per color channel to 8, This has no difference on the end result on screen because my game currently doesn't support HDR. So this wasn't actually doing anything tangible with the game, but it was occupying a lot more space in memory as well as slowing down some operations. So you can see the before and after here. I've cut down on over a gig of GPU memory, which is an awesome upgrade. While doing upgrades on performance, something else I focused in on was the load times when the game starts. Unfortunately, it is probably a lot longer of a load than I would really like right now, but I managed to cut down the load times by about a second by going through, and as I'm initializing the game, I'm doing a lot of loading from Lua files, and in the past, I was using a lot of strings when I really didn't need to. So for instance, here you can see I have this name, brick, and I was just taking that string and I was actually just getting the int out of it. So I switched from using a string like that to just having a number. And I found doing that, because it actually happens quite a lot, I was able to save about a second in my testing on the load time from that. So just the beginning of this, but hopefully I'll just keep chipping away at that until my load times are reduced by a lot. As I mentioned earlier, I did some work around the ability to update pre-renders. And as I was doing that, I noticed I was actually updating the screen improperly. So every time I would do a pre-render, I would switch the front buffer and the back buffer, but I wouldn't actually change either. So that's why in the loading screen, when you play the game, the screen kind of flickers back and forth when it comes to pre-renders. Now that I've fixed this, you can see with the new update, the loading screen just plays through and it just remains static with pre-renders, and we don't get that flickering. This is highly subjective, especially it's going to depend on your machine, but I found that with these performance upgrades, I was able to run the game at 2K resolution pretty stably. This is obviously going to depend completely on your machine, and the other thing I'll call out is right now I'm around 50 frames per second in this video clip, but I was also recording at the same time and recording at 2K. So I was pretty happy that I was able to get that resolution running somewhat stably. Of course, with combat and even in the assembly sequences, it takes a big hit, but it's a step forward. One bug I fixed during this update that I noticed was I had a bug left over around my particle code that I wasn't actually sending transparency values with particles. I was setting them all to 1, which you can see here in the code. So I went through and I fixed that so you can now have transparent values sent to the shaders, which means now I have a greater range of options when it comes to the output of the particles. I'll show you the difference here in Engine. So here we're at the side view with the fridge, and you can see the particles that are being emitted. This is before I fixed that update. Sorry, I know there's some flickering here. This is coming from the recording, but so you can see as I change these values, the particles on screen, the fog or the smoke, ice coming from the fridge isn't changing. And if I go over here to the hot dogs, you'll see it's the same thing. Changing these values doesn't affect the visual result on screen. Where here now, post-patch, you can see the difference, and you can also hopefully get an idea of how much more empowering this is and the greater range of options this will give me. Another bug I updated in this patch, which is going to have a big impact on the end results of the game, was around RNG, or random number generation. So I had a helper function that would generate a random number for me, and I would give it a range to generate with. The upper limit of that range with that function had some issues. So I've rewritten all of this, and basically the end result of this is before I was actually losing 1 minus the upper limit. So when it came to playing different sound effects or randomly selecting things, I was only picking, or I was missing the last possible option of random results. With this update, I'll now get the full range, which just means you'll get more sound effects and more variety as the game plays through. Happy to fix that. And the other thing I updated while I was working on this was I was noticing when I spawned like 10 or 20 enemies on screen, you would hear a lot of these footsteps clipping through each other. You can see here I added a priority check. So just if it's a low priority sound effect like footsteps, don't clip, don't overwrite. Speaking of audio bugs, I also noticed that my master volume in the audio options menu actually did nothing before this patch, so I updated this. There's still a couple of bugs around this, it's not working perfectly, but now you can adjust the master volume and it'll actually adjust all the audio coming through. Okay, that's everything coming to Redeemart in the next major update. I'm going to be hard at work to release it soon and to bring you some more programming videos. Once again, thank you for watching, thank you for all the support, and bye for now.